It's a pleasure to help hosting this event, and it's a great honor to have everyone here. And it's probably 2 years since I speak in English for more than 5 minutes, so I'll try my best. As you can see, the title is a turn. So I lived most of my adulthood actually outside of China. So it's a quite big turn for myself. So coming back from overseas and start a business in China. I saw myself as a hardcore Chinese. I thought I know the people, I know the market, at least I know them better than those who don't speak English. But the reality is I don't. So the first thing is, do I have a slide? Okay. A quick background of myself. I grew up in China. I studied electronic engineering, and then I studied computer science overseas, and spent almost 8 years working for 2 investment banks as an analyst, project manager, product manager, and then back to China in 2015. I started a technology company called Yimihaodi, and it's still running, but obviously in very good shape. And then I started the MIXPACE in 2016. We received a couple of funds of funding across the 3 years period, 5 million RMB in the first round, then 100 million in the second round, and early 2018 we received 400 million for MIXPACE. Well, majority of our business, our focus is on making our offices smart and more connected. So the first thing is I want to share, and I think it's probably useful for a lot of people return from overseas back to China, is the reverse cultural shock. Don't underestimate how big that is. Let's guess how many of the Chinese actually being overseas? 2%, 5%, 10%? What's your guess? How many Chinese people actually ever been overseas? It's about 2.3%. So it's very, very different from what we think it could be. And what's the percentage of Chinese actually holding an education higher than bachelor degree? Only 4%. So actually, that's the reality of what this market really is, and how the market is really operates. So when I come back and try to do a business, when I assumed the entire China must look like Beijing or Shanghai, and obviously that assumption is so wrong, so my first venture didn't end up that well. And also things like how you hire people, how you talk to people, how you get connected with people, make the things quite different. And then one day I spoke to a very senior businessman, and what he said to me struck my soul, and I think it's still very important. Is one thing is we have to, if we want to be running a big company or grow our company quickly in China, we must realize the reality is urbanization is still the mainstream of this business or of this economy. Urbanization and leading thousands or hundreds of million people out of poverty and raising their living standard. That's still the majority, where the majority of the growth coming out. So if we want to look at grow our business faster and quicker, we must be aligned with that trend and be a part of that trend rather than any other things. So a good example is Pinduoduo, and that's actually what the founder of Pinduoduo told me. When we look at Pinduoduo, we think, well, it's another Taobao. It's 10 years ago, copyright and all that things. But the reality is what they're trying to do is they're trying to sell cheap and relatively good quality product to people who probably could not afford them before. Like, well, $100 flat screen TV, things like that. So that's the first term or first thing I try and see. And another thing for me is from a big corporate to a startup. So when we work in big corporates, we get used to all those corporate cultures and surviving instincts. We are all email artists. We know how we write an email, who should we copy, who should we not copy, what do we need to say in a meeting, whose ass we need to kiss. But in startup, we have to be straightforward and focus on the most important thing. It took me a very long time to realize that we couldn't spend time looking after everything. We have to endure the reality that we probably can only do one thing good, and all the others just let it go. How it goes, just leave it, and we focus on the most important thing for the company, just one thing. That's already complex enough to do. Another reality is because I worked for a big corporate, and I used to work with A players, and assume people around you should work like that. And you are so frustrated that you are working with stupid people. And you couldn't hire them. Where did they go? So the reality is you are a small startup. Why good people join you? Even if you can find 2 or 3 good partners and co-founders, how could you attract very good employees join you? So I spent a lot of time trying to figure out how do I find them. And then I realized, just don't waste your time. Rather than try to find the top quality people, I think it's better to find a way to manage less strong background people, less educated, probably sometimes even less caliber, or probably people, if you have the choice, you don't want to work with them. So find a good way to manage them, train them, and bring them up. That's probably easier for a startup to survive rather than always find the best people. And another thing around from corporate to startup is in corporates we give people a lot of opportunities. We try to really train and bring them up. But in startup, I think, well, after a certain period or time you give, the best way probably just to tell them straight away. If you want to fire someone, just fire them as soon as possible. Don't waste and spending any time, and it's do more harm than the number would do. So another thing is from a traditional industry to a emerging industry, co-working and smart offices, and obviously there's no map in between. And I find that a lot of people like myself, we try to see what our experience can help us, past experience can help us in our new business. And my conclusion is, well, just don't try that. Just think any of your past experience will not help you anything at all in your new things. You are doing ground up and from a clean slate. Talk to the local players and interview a lot of good people and learn from the interview and have consultants, rather than try to use your own past experience and try to find a good pathway for that. I'll quickly go, time is up, so I quickly go through the other slides. And the first stage we did is we transformed old traditional workspaces to well-designed and trendy working spaces. And then we realized, well, that's not enough. We need to make them smarter. So we started moving on to intelligent equipment, and we try to build all these different technologies to help us connect the user space, manage the space smarter, and save energy, all that. And then we realized that's not enough, and we try to create the space more interact and bring people together. And it's no longer a working space, but a living room and a meeting space. And we will keep continuing our journey of innovation. And this is my WeChat. So if you want to talk afterwards, please scan my WeChat account. Thanks.